Thank you, Christine, for this introduction. So I present a little more about my work along the way. Let's just get started, and as often happens, you discover maybe I wanted another title. So it doesn't mean that I don't want to talk about intersubjective dimensions, but when you work with empirical data, I mean, what is really concrete is interactive aspects. So this is the approach. So this is the point here, and then we can of course discuss the intersubjective aspects and the intersubjective relation to interaction, but I'll leave this a little bit aside and stay with the empirical data. Okay. So the aim, I just discovered also that in the abstract I use the energy on specifying the theme. There's of course an aim. We're going somewhere. I want to describe the interactive aspects of the skilled practices of the case of aikido. So aikido is a case in relation to understanding what is skilled practice in couple-based activities. I also want to indicate and understand how embodied learning takes shape in interactions. And I use embodied learning more or less synonymous with incorporating and cultivating skills. I discussed that in another article, just so you are aware here, and we can return to this, but I might use this a little, so I might say use both terms, and I more or less, I point at the same kind of development in relation to practice. Okay? Good. So, this is the outline. I will have a preamble. So first I want to introduce you to Aikido, for those of you who have never tried to practice Aikido. And then I have some notions also on my methodological approach. And then this is a line of argumentation. I don't show you the analysis as such. I present an argumentation. It also means that the way I present theory and empirical data it could sound as if I'm guided by my theory and just looking for it. But this is not the case. I don't present it as I did it. I present it so it makes good sense for you. Just to keep that in mind. Good. What is Aikido? I trained Aikido, I should say, from the beginning, more than 20 years now. So I'm what you refer to as fourth Dan. It means I have the black belt 4 times. And this is my sensei, Victor Marais. So he has been my sensei all the way through. I visited the Hombo dojo, the main dojo in Tokyo, a couple of times and trained over there. I'll return to the description of these practices. Also, this is a picture from the main dojo. This is dosho. This is a Japanese traditional apprenticeship learning system, tradition. So dosho is the head of everyone. He's also the head of my sensei. He will have other senseis that he refers to. So it is this kind of Japanese traditional ranked martial art system. It is a defensive practice in which the one practicing an aikido technique, this is also referred to as the tori, aims at being in control of an attacker, and he does so by merging with the energy of the attacking partner. And the attacking partner is the uke. Uke is helping tori to develop the technique. That's the idea. What is specific about Aikido is that you try to merge or blend with the energy of your attacker, and then you receive it and use and sort of redirect it to use his energy against him or her. There's an awful lot of guys there, I have to admit. So I think that is about what I want to say about Aikido now. I have some videos so you can see a little bit of the practice of my sensei here, and also from the net a little more relaxed. I want to add also that maybe just to remind that a couple-based activities are characterized by there being a partner who acts back on the other practitioner. So it's this kind of dialectical involvement I'm interested in, and here specifically in Aikido. So let's try to see how it looks like. Victor, my sensei Victor. He's also the representative in Peru for the Hombo dojo. So this is one of the sessions where he's demonstrating his technique. So this is also the sessions where it looks a little more rough than it normally. It doesn't have to look this rough. He will slow down. He's 6 Dan now. So he receives it and he throws. This is a high throw. It doesn't need to be high, it can be lower, but they of course want to show how good they are at following tori. I should add also that one of the things that you train are these ways of falling, rolling, because this is a way of protecting yourself. If you don't act, you will have your arms sort of squeezed and it can hurt, so you have to move as an uke. That's the idea. Some of the techniques also go with the do, with a sort of a wooden stick or a wooden sword also. It's the same principle. Now it goes slow. You can of course have more attackers, and you receive, and you sort of use the energy against uke. When more people are attacking, you don't sort of lock them in the end. If only one is attacking and you demonstrate the technique, you will lock uke so he can't move. And then it moves, becomes quicker. Which is another thing, you have to know where your enemies are around you, so you move accordingly. So they're in the way of each other. Okay. And this is from a practice which I find is, I don't know this practice, but this is what I could find on the net. They are practicing the aikido technique. All skills are sort of divided in different techniques that has a name. And they are sort of practiced both on the front side and the back side of the attacker. And you will take turns also here. So one is uke, then you change the other, take the role of uke. So you have to train both aspects. And you can see over here, this is a bit slower as he's trying to figure out, or he's showing her how to perform the technique. So we continue training the same technique a couple of times during normal practice. It's not like you saw with Sensei Victor. It's more like you continue with the same practice for a while. Okay, and then this doesn't work, but this is me at my first 10 grading. It can also be two attackers, and it was a very short one, so I just throw them, these two guys coming running at me. I'm sorry, you can't see it, so you have to believe me. Yeah. Oh, now it works. That's nice. Yeah, it's only 40 seconds, so yeah. So you pass them around. Okay, it was 40 seconds. You can see it again. I'm so happy it works now. Okay. Now it doesn't work. Okay, you saw it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Good. So that was the first part. So I hope you have an idea of aikido. So it's a lot about respect for your partner. It's about being flexible so you can follow this energy and sort of learn yourself how to fall. You also move with the floor, so to say. Okay, then on methodology, that was the other part of the preamble. The lived and the living body is important, central to this analysis. Let me see where I am here. So while Körper refers to our physiological, neurological and skeletal beings, Leib concerns how we experience the body as a physical matter in our everyday lives. It's specifically Leib who refers to the lived body. I find importantly and very nicely argued by Sarah Heinemann in a paper from 21, Körper and Leib is often used to make distinctions about our embodied being and to highlight the lived perspectives. They are, however, both central to our embodied being and closely connected. So, as he suggests, we should talk about a Leibkörper. So the lived body is also a physical body, to remind of this. And it is a lived and living body. It's a body which still is in process and change. So that is an important theoretical approach. Using a phenomenological approach is also important for me to emphasize that, and it's emphasized in a lot of papers, the first person perspectives and descriptions of experiences are inevitable premises when generating empirical data. You ask people what they experience, what they sense, what they did, and so on. And this is actually a quote from Dan Sahari and Sean Gallagher's book, The Phenomenological Mind, to remind that accounting for subjective experience, which is the phenomenological aim, accounting for the experience, the structure of experience, should not be misunderstood as presenting subjective accounts of experience. So I might ask people, or I ask people what they experience and what they sense, but these descriptions are never the results in themselves. I bring them into a further analytical process. It looks like this. This is super short, but just maybe some of you want to discuss that afterwards. I know you're working with microphenomenology, some of you. In microphenomenology, there's a specific method that is applied from philosophical phenomenology. This is not my approach. I turn to phenomenology as a certain set of theoretical apparatus. There are a lot of insights, a lot of descriptions, concepts that I use in the analysis. It's of course also my ontological stance. So what I do, I specify first of all the phenomenological concepts of relevance to the specific aim and topic in focus for an investigation. Here, interaction. There are certain phenomenological descriptions on this. This is interesting for the analysis. I generate empirical data and also process and analyze these data on what I refer to as emic conditions. In short, it means that I follow ethnographical fieldwork experience, sort of traditions in the way I generate data. Some of you will know this as also thick descriptions, so I use the context as part of the analysis. I try to sort of be faithful to the descriptions according to the context that people are part of. And then when sort of continuing the analysis at home, I start shifting from the emic perspective to the ethic perspective involving the phenomenological theme, the phenomenological concepts defined in the beginning. And then finally, at times I also involve in philosophical description, phenomenological discussion on these concepts, saying maybe the philosophers didn't and the phenomenologists didn't think of all there was to say about interaction. There is so much more to learn if we also look into different kinds of practices. Which of course, I mean, if you look into, for example, John Gallagher, this is something he has said for more than a decade. Also, we should learn and be sort of provoked by the different kinds of practices. This is a very short version. Yes?
And just someone who's not used to this kind of approach, could you just give an example of a phenomenological concept?
Here, in this one, there will be a phenomenological concept, the concept of coordination, which is closely linked to interaction.
Okay, so the experience of coordination.
Yeah, no, it's also coordination with and coordination to. So there's a difference if you coordinate to a tool, an object, or if you coordinate with another person. And then they continue to sort of spell out how this coordination takes place. But it will come in a little bit later. Yeah. Also skill. Well, how do you understand skill? Is also, you could describe that from a phenomenological approach, and you could refer to this work and some of the discussions here. Of course, embodiment, as I just presented, is a concept also. So these are 3 examples that are at stake here. Thank you for the question. Yeah, yeah. And of course, sometimes, I mean, this is a little bit stiff, right? So it's never that stiff when you work with it. Sometimes you think this is a concept, and then you're in the field and you discover, by the way, I might change it a little bit because there's something more interesting related to it. I have to dig more into the literature and then revise the conceptual, the phenomenological concepts I use.
So they're not concepts to the participants, they're concepts to you to understand their accounts of them.
Yes, often they don't know of the phenomenological literature. They don't have to do that. I'm interested in their practices on their premises.
And I don't know emic and ethic. Can you repeat this briefly, or is it irrelevant?
Well, we could say short for now that emic is to understand the practice on the premises of the practitioners. So how it's contextualized or how it's enculturated and socialized in the given setting.
Right.
Yeah. So it also means that if I have emic descriptions in my note, it should be of this kind, so I can show it to the participant and say, did I get your practice right?
And they would say, yeah, it makes sense.
And they say, yeah, that makes sense. And we can have a dialogue about it. And that's my beginning point. Yeah.
And ethic is when you zoom out from that.
That's when I zoom out and I use a theory which sort of we assume works across cultures. And that's phenomenology is assuming to do so. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's I have a reference in the end where I have a longer discussion on emic and ethic also, but for now. Okay, let me keep this. Okay, this is a field work, and this is me not moving quick enough a couple of years ago. I was doing this field work in a practice I know very well. And as if any of you has been involved, and I know Med at least has been involved in field work, I mean there's this oxymoronic challenge of both familiarizing yourself and unfamiliarizing yourself. And if I'm so familiarized, you can be so familiarized, it's really tricky to unfamiliarize. Especially in a system where you have to show respect for sensei, and now suddenly I'm trying to take a distance and figuring out what is this about. So I'm putting this up also because I think it's nice sometimes just to remind that sometimes this kind of work takes time. These data that I present to you are not new. It took me like 4 to 6 years before I really thought I could find the proper way of relating to these kind of data, because I kept on being too familiar to my own data. And I think sometimes we underestimate that it simply takes time, more reading and another sort of waiting position to reread your own material to actually have a grip on where it will go in the analysis. Okay, let's remind of this. This is the line of argumentation. So I'll talk about interactions from a phonological perspective. I'll talk about expertise of decentering motor intentionality. That's connected to also the description of interaction. I'll talk about incorporating aikido skills. And then in the end, why should we bother? That's also concluding. First of all, we can think of interaction as taking place on different levels at the same time when engaging in couple-based activities. That is, we can distinguish between the interactive demands that it takes to participate in a practice, and then also the interactive aspects that it takes to deliberately engage in practicing with a partner. So if we take the material art form of aikido, definitely, and that's also why it's a very good case. When you start practicing in a dojo, there are lots of rules, and they are very explicit. So you have to bow, that's when you enter the dojo, or you go on sesa, that is on your knees. This is the beginning, which is a little bit strange in the beginning. You have to wear the hakama, the black trousers, and the gi, the white trousers, and the hakama is very stiff here, and also the belt. So you feel more stiffened here. You have to, during practice, it is expected that you respect your partner by bowing before starting a session and also while ending a session. This is normal. And there's a lot of other sort of more specified doxas that goes into the practice, which goes with the aikido. So my point about mentioning it here now is that this participation, it does in itself add to what is often also referred to as a second nature. So I start carrying my body and behaving in certain ways, and it should feel in a certain way when I engage in the practicing. And that is, again, that is part of the actual practice here. Even the way I start reflecting about what I do is informed by the way of participating in this practice. In the abstract, I refer to an ecology of the Aikido practice. I'm not quite sure I want to use that term. Maybe it's more relevant to talk about an enculturation and also a socialization into the actual practice. And if you don't do that, you simply don't get what is at stake in the actual practice between the two practicing Aikido together. You won't get it. Yeah. I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next one. Then we can talk, what I just presented here is actually not phenomenology. You can look into sensorial ethnography, you can look into sociology and anthropological analysis. You would find this discussed here. It's part of my work also. Let's then turn to the phonological description of embodied interaction. So, first of all, if we look into Merleau-Ponty, you would see that if you talk about embodiment, he, especially in Merleau-Ponty's work, he emphasized the intertwined connections between perception and movement. And you'll find other places where this connection has also been addressed as perception-action cycles. What I move on to use here is the work of Jaegher and different collaborators here. As part of their phenomenological analysis, they define, they add to Merleau-Ponty, and they emphasize that the meaningful connection between perception and movement reaches beyond, or you could say is more than the perception action cycles of singularized bodies, which seems to be the focus of Merleau-Ponty's work. So the meaningful connections between perception and movement form part of complexities of interlinked perception action cycles. As part of their phenomenological, and it is actually also an enactive analysis, they define coordination as a non-accidental correlation between behaviors of two or more systems that are in some degree of coupling. Subsequently, they distinguish between coordination to an object, typically a tool, and coordination with another subject, an agent. Coordination to addresses, for example, the extended characteristics of how the runner relates to and sends the terrain through the running shoe, and how the tennis player sends and hits the ball through the racket. Coordination will addresses the way the practitioner couples to the perception action cycles of another practitioner. So they extend and blend. The coupling is not fixed and static, as is partly the case when objects like running shoes and tennis rackets are sort of related to, but it's in flux. Interacting while dancing, playing tennis, or practicing aikido together is a dynamic process between two practitioners, two agents. And Fuchs and Jaegher especially emphasizes that the process of interaction is driven forward in a continuous fluctuation between synchronized, desynchronized, and in-between states of the moving and acting bodies involved. And in moments of synchronization, and it's not like it's synchronized all the times, but it can happen now and then, the intentionality of the interactors decenters is their description. A decentering which takes place also on a pre-reflective level. It means that the motor intentionality is actually decentered. So the way I move is sort of given through the interaction. In concrete, this means that in such synchronized moments, the practitioner involved can experience that the interaction process gains a life of its own. The I'm played by the football play, I'm danced by the dance, and so on. This is the kind of descriptions it relates to. So, I like this description a lot, but I also have some kind of concern here, because when you look into the Jaegher and her collaborators, their work, they focus descriptions and analysis on recognizable everyday experiences of how we coordinate our movement with others before we know of it. So they refer between others to meeting another person in a corridor, you know, this where you kind of, oh, I'll go here, you know, normally we just pass, but sometimes this happens. And they say, okay, in these moments, we actually see it, that there's this kind of coordination going on, but normally it just works for us without thinking about it. So these are the kind of examples they use. They also bring in a tennis, sort of talk about a tennis match, how they move in relation to the opponent, but they don't actually dig into the empirical data and talk about what about the skilled kind of interaction, and that is my interest here. What is their point, though, and which I really like here, is that they emphasize that movements take shape not only in relation to, but through the movement of the other. And in such moments of the interactive flux, the couple who, for example, and this is another of my project, dances the Argentinian tango, experience that the next step takes shape in the very life of the interaction. And here we have this kind of description, the dance is dancing me. Good. Yes, please.
What is the definition of synchrony in this field? So you talk about synchronized and desynchronized in between states, and I was just wondering what the definition of synchrony is in this field, 'cause it's probably different from an more empirical.
Yeah, okay, this is, for short now, and we can return to it. This is exactly where they are very much in sort of in a systemic sort of description of the synchronized and desynchronized. So they would talk about being in sync, so they refer to when things are in the same timing of things. So this is more related to the enactive part of the analysis, and then it continues to sort of link it to the phenomenological description, which is much more related to the first person descriptive.
So you actually measure the timing of the behavior and then the phenomenology and compare them? Or is that too simple?
It is they don't measure anything, roughly. This is an argument. This is based in enactivism. And then they continue sort of working with it in different kinds of settings. So it's an argument through and through. I would say though that they have some data on the mother-child dyad, where they look into different stuff, and as far as I remember, they also have something about autism, where they look into the interaction and how they are in timing. But what I'm talking about here, you're right. It is how it is sort of, how can you measure it as timing, and then what I add to it is also how do we experience it. So it's not just systems; it's also agents that experience something about being in this kind of timing. Is it go?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see where I'm here. Okay. Let's move on to skill here. So my next question is, okay, but this is a nice description, but I don't really get, this is everyday situations. It seems to just happen for us, in the corridor. And then I move, it doesn't take a lot of practice. What happens in these kind of situations where we really want to go out and measure it or see how can we sort of create data on that? And we're in a situation with very skilled practitioners. Is it just like something that happens, or is it also trainable or trained or somehow? So that's what interests me. To do that, I need to know something about skill. First of all, and this is an old reference to Leader, 1990, The Absent Body, when he talks about skills, and he indicates how the incorporation of a skill denotes the process in which specific ways of moving and handling certain challenges is grasped and comes to pervade the Leibkörper structure of the subject. When the skill has been incorporated, it adds to, moderates, or reshape the practitioner's potential engagement in the environment and with others. In Merleau-Pontian terms, it thereby changes their experiences of I can. As Leader exemplify, after a subject has learned to swim, they will perceive the swimming pool as offering and potentially inviting for actions and activities which were not possible before the swimming skills had been incorporated. Phenomenologically described, the incorporated skills add to the register of ways in which perception action possibilities disclose for the practitioner. And now we come into sort of more recent stuff on skills described on phenomenological premises, as for example Amy Purser has recently exemplified and emphasized in her analysis of dance practices. The skills acquired are enacted in open-ended ways. Skills are much more than a motor performance capacity. It also acquires and contributes to the, and I quote, the tacit sense of the body's possibilities for active engagement with the world around us, end quote. If you look into the literature on embodiment in sports activities, embodied cognition and so on, you will find more and more articles. There's Amy Purser here. You will find Susiska and Agerholm, Breivik, Wayne Christensen, Sutton and McWayne, that talks about also skills and emphasize how open-ended it is, that it sort of involves contextual sort of adjustments that is part of the skill itself. So it's this sort of understanding of skill I'm working with. It also means that with the aikido practice, it's not just a technique, but it's also the knowledge of how to exercise the technique according to the rules of the games, the doxa, and also sensing my partner, how it is at the exact moment. So let's go to the aikido practice now. I started, as I told you, practicing aikido about 20 years ago, and I remember quite clearly how the first many years of training were focused on getting the basic movement patterns into the body. Learning the very first technique, the ikkyo, I was deeply focused on coordinating arms and legs the right way. And I see that with newcomers also, you're like, okay, is it this foot or do I this or is it this first? And then, you know, it's 1, 2, 3, so that becomes very sort of stiff. You're very concentrated on arms and legs. After a while, you don't think about arms and legs, you start being aware of where the movement starts in the hip and how the arms is actually not moving, it's my hip that is moving. So I meet the attack like this. This is just in front of me, it is my hip. Then I start being aware of the timing. So if I'm training with Jaegher, for example, you can sit for now, Jaegher. He's taller than me, so I would sort of adjust it a little bit. So the different kinds of diagonals and circles that I work with, they would be different with Jaegher compared to with if I was training with Steve. And also a more experienced, I would train differently compared to a novice in the, I don't know if you're trained aikido. So I mean, it just changes. So even though I don't notice my arms and legs, I'm still aware, I'm still reflective about what I do. That's the point. So we are, this is the cultivating of the ikkyo, and you can see this is sensei, and he's training here in Humbo Dojo, so he's still corrected. He has trained for more than 30 years by now, 40 close to. And was an ushideshi. It means that he lived 5 years on a daily basis in dojo in Brazil. Way back. So he knows his stuff. It's so much second nature. He's still corrected. It's a process through that. When I'm still corrected also by sensei when I train, still also in the ikkyo, and he will come and he will sort of show me different ways. I just want to make aware of the scaffolding assistance he's affording here. So the instructor's assistance helps to control the learner's body. That's the whole idea. And he would shift and he would be my partner to show me by sort of giving me a certain constraint in the movement or emphasizing something by saying it while we practice it. So he will guide me so I can perform the different technique with much less effort. This is from Greg Downey's work on capoeira. The master thereby offers scaffolding assistance. So he helps me direct my awareness of what I should be aware of now in the way I know the skill. Yeah. Importantly also, I think very nicely emphasized by Downey, the scaffolding process need not be part of a planned learning strategy. It's not like my sensei knows what he's going to learn me when we are there. He will be there with me in the situation on the day, and the decision is sort of taken by him more or less consciously. He's meeting me and then the decision comes up. Yeah, so if we use the Fuchs and the, Hanne de Jaegher and collaborators, their description of coordination will, we would say that here there's a dominance of the one, the master here being sort of top on who is in charge of the flux of the interaction in the coordination with. That could be a description here. Not only, but that's part of it. Yeah. So now I'm going to read aloud. This is a thick description, and it's more or less the last part before I conclude. It will take about 7 minutes. We started a little bit late. I hope that's okay. So what you asked, who was it that asked about the emic description, whether you also? So this is also what you could refer to as a thick description, including sort of description on an emic. Thick description, yeah, is a term you use in ethnographical fieldwork, where you include the context in the description.
Yeah, lots of stuff, basically.
No, not lot of stuff.
Okay.
But you acknowledge that you are investigating things in the wild, in the complexity of our lived experiences. So we try to go with that. And I've emphasized some of the stuff we are looking at, hopefully, before I'm reading this.
Yeah.
So this was when I was training in Humbo Dojo in Japan, and we met another group of people also from Denmark, and we talked a little with them about the training. As you can see, there's not a lot of space. This is not even crowded. So I'm focusing on my practice now, but there's this going on at the same time. Another Danish sensei visited dojo at the same time as our small group from Rising Dojo. One afternoon, he let me know, with a knowledgeable smile, that the highly experienced Japanese practitioners whom I had noticed gathered in the corner in the dojo next to the balcony. It was over there when you came into the dojo. Every morning, they were also known as the crocodiles. They had practiced daily for decades at Humbo Dojo. Arriving early for their morning practices, they watched the new visitors entering the dojo to practice. Like crocodiles, they would silently look out for the practitioners whom they, in a metaphorical sense, could eat up during the impending practice. Blending with the energy and timing of your movements, they give you no chance to escape, as the Danish sensei explained to me. Setting up an unrelenting pace, they will wear you down. However, being invited to practice with one of these crocodiles is at the same time an honor and an implicit credit to you as an aikido practitioner, that you are actually watched by some of the really old guys there. They are highly experienced others you should strive to practice with. Takai sensei was one of these crocodiles, and also a close contact to my sensei. Sensei might have talked about and pointed out a small group of practitioners visiting from his dojo. At that time, I was already the oldest and the most experienced of his students, and I'm quite sure that the communication with sensei directed Taka sensei's crocodile attention towards me. So there's this kind of game going on, which is going on everywhere, also in tango. So it means something how you can get the practice with the people that are really skilled. One early morning at the Humbo Dojo, Taka sensei invited me to practice with him. At the time, Taka sensei had practiced at the dojo for more than 40 years, I was told. I estimated that he was close to 70, so crocodile or not, I could not help first of all perceiving him as an old man. Taka sensei did not mark his higher aikido status directly, nor did he act like a master teaching me. He said nothing, but just started practicing the technique in an ongoing flow. I remember that as the very first thing I felt quite strongly that I had to prove that I had the capability to blend with the energy of his flow. As I had been warned, in less than 10 minutes I felt he was eating me up, slowly and in full control. He was both with me and continuously ahead of me. Before I had raised my arm to perform the attack, he was already in the process of moving my arm. His movements seemed minimal, small steps without stillness, while I sensed that he had full control of my center and that he could throw me at any moment. After a while, I tried in moments to focus my attention on his arm movement to better learn from what he was doing. Somehow he moved his arm in a stiff and strangely imprecise way compared to the precision I had aimed for at developing for decades. However, the movements nevertheless felt strong, connected to his center, and extremely effective. He knew exactly where my balance was and anticipated my movements, manipulating my moving body with minimal force. As always, the roles of practicing as Tori or Uke changed after the 4 attacks, and after having exercised the technique as Tori, he followed me as my Uke. I immediately sensed a thick resistance in his movement and realized that I had to really push too much according to the Aikido ideals to make him move, and that the tension in my body rose. He moved, but he also let me know in the way he followed the technique I exercised that I was not the one in full control. There was nothing else to do but to try to find a way to let the tension dissolve and to fine-tune ways to let the circles of the technique begin from my hip joint, relaxing my arm movements still more while breathing, grounding, focusing on the center of on the sense of my center. The more I found a way to relax and breathe and stay in flow of exercising the technique, the better he moved with me. A few times he set the tempo of the ongoing flow a bit slower and gave me a chance to be aware of particular aspects of the technique. I watched his movement in these slow parts intensively without really being sure if I got what he aimed at directing my attention towards. He definitely offered a scaffolding opportunity, as I just described before, it was sort of normal, but in a quite open way. I had to tap in and figure things out by aiming at harmonizing with his movements. I did not experience any explicit scaffolding guidance. Rather, I had to follow and take in the sensation that was enacted in the interaction and find a way to make them mine. He was the experienced other, practicing as normal. In this setting, I was the newcomer who had incorporated just enough capabilities to be able to form part of the interaction offered. He was showing me an honor, and I found myself in a position striving to live up to this honor while being aware of how this unique interaction cultivated my sensation while exercising the technique. So this was actually the second round of practice that morning, and I can see also from my notes that the tiny muscles inside my hip joints screamed. I mean, you go down and you go up and you go down and you go up a lot. And halfway through the practice, I was not sure I could complete the session, which would be a humiliation and also dishonoring of my partner. So you just keep on going. I had to let go of tension to survive, so to say, while staying focused at the same time. The more I let go of insisting on directions and accuracy, the easier I felt it was to move his center. At the time, I strongly felt I had to rely on my peripheral vision in the interaction to be able to blend with the flow and the energy of his movement. His expression was, as mine, I presume, stone-faced. No expression until the end of the practice, when I thanked him by remembering to quickly move to Caesar on me and bow a little bit lower than normal, than usual, to show my gratitude and respect. His face opened up in a big friendly smile. He never said a word during the practice. There had just been a nod or minimal head shake here and there. So this is the thick description of what happens with, I am the skilled person, and we do this kind of interaction, and there is a flux of interaction. He seems to be ahead of it, even to the degree that he's ahead of my intentionality, but he also blends with me. So this is and we do this deliberately. It's based on what we can do, we're still giving into it. I hope you get this from the description, and it's only possible because I already know the aikido rules. I wouldn't get the training with Taka-sensei if I did not know how to behave. Not just how to enter the dojo, but also to behave in the interaction. Okay, finishing up. These were the aim. Let's just jump to this one. Conclusion, at least 2 levels of interaction shapes the skilled practice of aikido. That was what I started presenting. Embodied learning takes shape in interactions, yes, on condition of, and through the interactions. And then this is more open-ended, so there's a little more sort of words here. Interaction between the 2 skilled practitioners cannot be analyzed without considering the practice they are part of. That is my first point here. I hope I've convinced you by the thick description also. So there's an enculturation and socialization which is part of the practice between the 2 training aikido. You can't ignore that, you won't get the practice as such. Interaction in couple-based activities should not be reduced to a micro-patterns of how action versus reaction unfold. And I mean, this is a lot about not, but and I didn't mention, so you can find analysis that do exactly this. They have a very specific analysis of actions and how actions develop according to reactions. But they don't touch on this kind of flux that you actually experience if you want to take the description seriously. We can get back to that. I'm referring here to Michael Kimmel's work, if somebody knows him.
Whose work, sorry?
Michael Kimmel. In the skilled practice, the 2 practicing together decenters their intentional engagement, and they do that strategically. So I think that's sort of a note to the Jaegher and collaborators, their work, that you can actually sort of manipulate the way you engage in the interaction as well, and you can be on top of to which degree you want to sort of let go would be the way you experience it. Method, I added this also because I know some of you are working differently. So for me this is with phenomenology. So for me this is important. Phenomenological analysis of interaction should involve context, the implicit doxa and ideals shaping what it takes to participate in a given practice. So it's another way of framing this one. Analyzing interaction in the wild, as it is in the complex life we're part of, that is here, the enculturated practice of aikido, has been used as an approach to investigate intersubjectivity empirically. That is, I've looked into the interaction, the concrete things that happens, and how it is experienced by the people practicing. Now we started at 10 minutes late, so this should be 45 minutes. These are only some of the references, but I highlighted the top 3 because most of all the other references that I used you will find in those articles. Otherwise it would be 3 slides, and I know by experience I might not see all the slides myself, so these are the most important references. I hope you bear over with me. Thank you for your attention.